Good morning, everybody. We have two chapters to read for today. You didn't have any reading yesterday since you took the reading test, but today we're getting back into Princess and the Goblin, reading chapters 25 and 26. So last we heard of from Curdy, who we're going to be seeing in our chapter today. He had a conversation with his mom. Do you remember what she said about seeing the light in the sky, like this globe or moon, and how it led her to safety from the goblins? And then at the end of the chapter, we know Curdy left his house. He wants to find out more information about the goblins' plan to, he thinks, tunnel into the castle where the princess is in order to capture her and kidnap her for Hairlip's wife. So we're starting off on that part today. So I'll present my screen. You can follow along in chapter 25 if you've got your own book. Okay, so chapter 25, Curdy Comes to Grief is the name of this chapter. Everything was for some time quiet above the ground. The king was still away in a distant part of his dominions. The men-at-arms kept watching about the house. They had been considerably astonished by finding it at the foot of the rock in the garden, the hideous body of the goblin creature killed by Curdy. Remember that? But they came to the conclusion that it had been slain in the mines and had crept out there to die. And except an occasional glimpse of a live one, they saw nothing to cause alarm. Curdy kept watching in the mountain, and the goblins kept burrowing deeper into the earth. As long as they went deeper, there was, Curdy judged, no immediate danger. To Irene, the summer was as full of pleasure as ever, and for a long time, although she often thought of her grandmother during the day and often dreamed about her at night, she did not see her. The kids and the flowers were as much her delight as ever, and she made as much friendship with the miners' children she met on the mountain as Ludi would permit. But Ludi had very foolish notions concerning the dignity of a princess. The princess is just the one who loves all her brothers and sisters best, and who is most able to do them good by being humble towards them. Princess Irene is a true princess because she doesn't care who her friends are, whether they're rich or poor. She makes friends with everybody, and she's very humble, which means she doesn't think too highly of herself. Now, at the same time, she was considerably altered for the better in her behavior to the princess. This is Ludi. She's considerably altered, so she's acting better towards her. She could not help saying that she was no longer a mere child, but wiser than her age would account for. She kept foolishly whispering to the servants, however, sometimes that the princess was not right in her mind, and other nonsense of the same sort. Now, all this time, Curdy had to be sorry, without a chance of confessing, that he had behaved so unkindly to the princess. He so wants to apologize to her. This perhaps made him more diligent in his endeavors to serve her. And he wants to serve her by protecting her so that the goblins don't get her. His mother and he often talked on the subject, and she comforted him and told him she was sure he would someday have the opportunity he so much desired. Here I should like to remark, for the sake of princes and princesses in general, that it is a low and contemptible thing to refuse to confess a fault or even an error. If we make mistakes, or do something wrong, even if it is a mistake, we should be okay with accepting that and saying, I'm sorry, I did something wrong. Irene and Curdy both are good at being able to accept that they make mistakes and say to another person that they do. Now, if a true princess has done wrong, she is always uneasy until she has had an opportunity of throwing the wrongness away from her by saying, I did it, and I wish I had not, and I'm sorry for having done it. And that's true for all of us. We all should feel weird and unsettled and not quite right if we've done something wrong and we haven't said something to another person yet. It kind of makes us feel like, oh, I've done this and I need to say something to another person to confess that I made that mistake. You probably all relate in some way to that. Maybe you've done something wrong before and you didn't want to say it at first, right? don't want to say it at first because you don't want to get in trouble, but the longer you wait, like it just keeps sitting with you and you want to say something because that's going to make you feel better to confess that you did wrong. Now, to continue, it says, so you see there is some ground for supposing that Curdie was not a minor only, but a prince as well. He is just like Irene at heart, and both of them, if they make mistakes or do something wrong, they want to tell another person. That makes him a true prince at heart. Many such instances have been known in the world's history. At length, however, he began to see signs of a change in the proceedings of the Goblin's excavators. They were going no deeper, but had commenced running on a level, so the Goblins are mining just like this. And he watched them, therefore, more closely than ever. All at once, one night, coming to a slope of very hard rock, they began to ascend, which means to go up. They began to ascend along the inclined plane of its surface. So instead of going sideways, now they're going up. What could that mean? Maybe they're starting to dig into the house. Now, having reached its top, they went again on a level for a night or two. So they're going sideways, sideways, straight, up, and now straight again. For a night or two, after which they began to ascend once more. So sideways, up again, and kept on at a pretty steep angle. Now, at length, Curdie judged it time to transfer his observation to another quarter. So he's going to go somewhere else to see what's happening. And the next night, he did not go to the mine at all. But leaving his pickaxe and clue at home, and taking only his usual lumps of bread and peas pudding, he went down the mountain to the king's house. He climbed over the wall and remained in the garden the whole night, creeping on hands and knees from one spot to the other, and lying at full length with his ear to the ground, listening. But he heard nothing except the tread of the men-at-arms as they marched about, whose observation, as the night was cloudy and there was no moon, he had little difficulty in avoiding. For several following nights he continued to haunt the garden and listen, but with no success. Now at length, early one evening, whether it was that he had got careless of his own safety or that the growing moon had become strong enough to expose him, his watching came to a sudden end. He was creeping from behind the rock where the stream ran out, for he had been listening all round it in the hope it might convey to his ear some indication of the whereabouts of the goblin miners. When just as he came into the moonlight on the lawn, a whiz in his ear and a blow upon his leg startled him. He instantly squatted in the hope of eluding further notice. But when he heard the sound of running feet, he jumped up to take the chance of escape by flight, which is not meaning flying. He's going to run away. But then he fell, however, with a keen shoot of pain, for the bolt of a crossbow had wounded his leg. A crossbow is, I'll show you a picture. It has an arrow on it, and it's that arrow that hit him. Quite modern ones. Here's more of an ancient one because this would have been older. So that's what hit him, with this arrow that flung into his leg. Who could have done that? Think the goblins? Now, let me find our place again. And the blood was now streaming from it, his wound in his leg where the arrow hit him. It was useless to struggle, and he submitted in silence. "It's a boy!" cried several of them together in a tone of amazement. "I thought it was one of those demons," one of the goblins he's talking about. "What are you about here?" "Going to have a little rough usage, apparently," said Curdie, laughing as the men shook him. So they're shaking him, thinking, what is this boy doing here? "Impertinence will do you no good. You have no business here in the king's grounds." And by the way, impertinence is like being rude. So they're accusing him of being rude Sorry, I lost my spot again. So they say, impertinence or rudeness will do you no good. You have no business here in the king's grounds, and if you don't give a true account of yourself, you shall fare as a thief. So they're saying, we're going to think you're a thief if you don't explain yourself. Why, what else could he be? Said one. Well, he might have been after a lost kid, suggested another, meaning a goat. I see no good in trying to excuse him. He has no business here anyhow. Let me go away then, if you please, said Curdie. But we don't please, not except you give a good account of yourself. And an account of yourself means you need to explain why you're here. I don't feel quite sure whether I can trust you, said Curdie. Well, we're the king's own men-at-arms, said the captain courteously, for he was taken with Curdie's appearance and courage. Well, I will tell you all about it then, if you will promise to listen to me and not do anything rash. Rash in this case means like too quick, not thinking about your actions, just doing it. Well, I call that cool, said one of the party, laughing. He will tell us what mischief he is about if we promise to do as he pleases him. So they don't trust him. I was about no mischief, said Curdie. But ere he could say more, he turned faint and fell senseless on the grass. So he passed out, fainted. Discovered that the bolt they had shot, taking him for one of the goblin creatures, had wounded him. So he fainted from the pain, and he's lost a lot of blood. The blood is streaming from his leg at the wound. Now they carried him into the house and laid him down in the hall. The report spread that they had caught a robber, and the servants crowded in to see the villain. Amongst the rest came the nurse. The moment she saw him, she exclaimed with indignation, I declare it's the same young rascal of a miner that was rude to me and the princess on the mountain. He was never rude, but Ludi does not like him. He actually wanted to kiss the princess, she said. I took good care of that wretch. And he was prowling about, was he? Just like his impudence, which is another way of saying rudeness again. Now, the princess being fast asleep, she could misrepresent at her pleasure. Meaning, Ludi can say all she wants about, oh, he was so terribly rude, he wanted to kiss the princess, even though it's the princess who actually was the one wanting to do it to say thank you. So she's just lying, and she's able to get away with it because the princess isn't there to say anything different. Now, when he heard this, the captain, although he had considerable doubt of Ludi saying the truth, he resolved to keep Curdie as a prisoner until they could search into the affair. So after they had brought him round a little and attended to his wound, which was rather a bad one, they laid him, still exhausted from the loss of blood, upon a mattress in a disused room, one of those already so often mentioned, and locked the door and left him. So there's tons of rooms in this house. He is locked away in one of them, just resting as a prisoner. He passed a troubled night, and in the morning they found him talking wildly. In the evening, he came to himself, but felt very weak, and his leg was exceedingly painful. Wondering where he was and seeing one of the men-at-arms in the room, he began to question him and soon recalled the events of the preceding night, the night before. As he was himself unable to watch any more, he told the soldier all he knew about the goblins and begged him to tell his companions and stir them up to watch with tenfold vigilance. But whether it was that he did not talk quite coherently, or that the whole thing appeared incredible, certainly the man concluded that Curdie was only raving still. So he's telling them the goblins are coming in, and they say, oh, he's just crazy. That's what it means by he's raving. And they tried to coax him into holding his tongue. This, of course, annoyed Curdie dreadfully. He's thinking, we don't have much time left to save the princess, who now felt in his turn what it was not to be believed. It's terrible not to be believed. And the consequence was that his fever returned, and by the time when, at his persistent entreaties, the captain was called, there could be no doubt that he was raving. They think, oh, he's just a lunatic. He's gone crazy. They did for him what they could and promised everything he wanted, but with no intention of fulfillment. They say, what do you want? And he tells them, and they aren't actually going to do anything. Now at last he went to sleep, and when at length his sleep grew profound and peaceful, they left him, locked the door again, and withdrew, intending to revisit him early in the morning. So that's where we end off. You are going to read one more chapter in just a bit, but let's review. So why does the book say that Curdie could be supposed to be a prince as well? Because if he has done something wrong, it starts to bother him until he admits that he was wrong, until he says to someone that he's sorry. So it's eating up at him inside, thinking, I need to apologize to Irene. I did something wrong. That's why he's a true prince at heart. And why is he kept as a prisoner? Well, the men-at-arms think that he's a thief. That's right. And a lot of that is also Ludi saying, oh, he's this rude boy. We saw him one night. He's terrible. So it's Ludi's lies plus them thinking that he's a thief because he broke into the palace, basically. And why can't he convince the king's men of the plot? Well, Ludi lying, saying he's a bad person, sort of made it seem like he's not trustworthy, and they also think he's just gone crazy because of the pain. So we've got one more short chapter for you to read after this. We'll see how he's able to protect the princess as a prisoner. How can he protect her at this point? So you'll see a little bit more in the next chapter about the goblins. And I will talk to you later. Bye.